And welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the show, and excited to be back on. It is show number 81. Happy to be on with you. We are live on Facebook right now. We are live on Disrupt Ed TV and live with our friends in Canada, Voice Ed Radio Canada, and my friend Stephen Hurley. So excited to be on those airways, networks, podcasts, whatever you want to call it. And we'll be on iTunes very soon. So it's show number 81, Education, Leadership, and Beyond. Super excited for today's guest, Joe Sanfelippo. Dr. Joe is a superintendent out in Wisconsin, and very excited to talk to Joe. We're going to talk all things education, and certainly concepts from his best-selling book here, Hacking Leadership. And really excited just to talk to Joe about his philosophies on education and the work he's doing out there. I've never met him in person. We've talked a few times here, but he just seems like a real down-to-earth guy, someone that you can have a conversation with, someone that you know believes in kids, and excited to meet Joe coming up here. And I found out through talking to different people, he's a friend actually related to, through his wife, Tom Ricard, our friend here, in Orange County, New York. So small world. Quick intro for today's sponsor, Catskill Marketing. They're the group here that is helping me with my stuff that I'm doing. They do all work with websites, marketing strategies, logos, video editing, analytics on Google and email and all that kind of cool stuff. Catskill Marketing, they've been a friend to me and extended their services. So excited to be working with them. Matt Gottlieb and Johnny Ilavansky. info@catskillmarketing.com. 845-787-3927 is their number. Again, info@catskillmarketing.com. My buddies there at Catskill Marketing. So reach out to them if they can help you with some of the work that you may be doing. That being said, let's get started. We're going to meet Dr. Joe here in a couple minutes, and this is a fantastic book. It really is. If you're an educator, you don't just have to be a principal or a superintendent. This is for all educators. And there's so much practical information in here for someone that's got ADD, that doesn't want to sit down with a gigantic, big, fat book. This has so many practical tips in it. And I just wanted to pick out a couple things. The first point, and I'm going to ask Joe about these when we meet him here. Number one, there is stuff in here that you could do tomorrow. When you walk in your school building, when you walk in where you work tomorrow, you can put some of these things in place tomorrow. It's not filled with, philosophical jargon that you're kind of reading it like, what the heck are they talking about? It is practical, real stuff. And, in there, it talks about, one of the things they talk about is, making the positive impact, the importance of those interactions with others. And just today, Joe is a master storyteller. Just today in my school, Port Jervis High School, it had an amazing story. We have a new student that's in a wheelchair. He had a traumatic brain injury as a young man. Again, when you meet him, your heart goes out to him for what he's gone through in his life. And he comes into the cafeteria, and just watching the kids come up, interact with him, meet him, the kids he sat with at the table, so kind, and then a young man walked from across the cafeteria, one of our star athletes. No one said anything to him. Nobody asked him anything. He walked over and introduced himself, shook this young man's hand, and I just said, man, this is great, right? This is great. And Dr. Joe clicked in my head, not only call parents for good things, but call and tell them what they did. So before this podcast, I got on the phone and contacted that mom and shared that story. And she was crying. She was crying on the other end of the line. And those positive interactions. So that's something you could do tomorrow. If that tool is not in your toolbox, that is something that you can start tomorrow. You don't need a degree. You don't need to study that. There's no formula doing that. You just got to do it. And stuff like that is in this book. The second point I wanted to bring up, lead learner. I have been making it a point to be in classrooms and be in classrooms and be in classrooms because I'm a principal. I want to be instructional leader, right? But they're the experts. The teachers are the experts. They've been teaching much longer than me. They're in there. They're in there every day. They're the experts. So the instructional leader they bring up the concept in here along Joe and his partner, Tony. Joe, you're going to help me with that pronunciation there soon, Synasis. Being a lead learner. And here on page 26, they have some tips about being a lead learner. So that mindset of shifting from being an instructional leader to being a lead learner, lead alongside your staff. And a couple of tips they give in here in the book. Someone who models learning, offers an ear when someone's struggling. Not, again, offering maybe 6 or 7 things they could do better, but lending an ear. Initiate Spirit Day when it's been a long month. Advocating for the needs of student and staff. Removing obstacles so staff can maximize their teaching by taking risks. This is great stuff in here and looking to be a lead learner. So that's one of the things I'm going to shift my paradigm from going to try to be an instructional leader to being a lead learner and model those things for my staff right alongside with them. So great concepts in the book. And you know what? I talk too much. Let's bring in our guest here. Welcome, Dr. Joe Sanfelippo, to the program.
Hey, how you doing, Andrew? How are things going?
I am doing very well. Everyone, this is Dr. Joe Sanfelippo, Superintendent out at Fall Creek, Wisconsin schools. Joe is the author of Hacking Leadership. He's also the author of The Power of Branding, as well as Principal Professional Development. Joe, it's great to talk to you.
I appreciate you having me on today, and hopefully we can get a couple conversations rolling about some of the cool things that are happening in schools.
Absolutely. What's the temperature out there in Wisconsin? Because your 1 minute walks to work, it's unbelievable. Today it warmed up here.
Yeah, it's warm. I think it's in the 20s right now, so it's actually pretty warm right now. But on this weekend, I got a text from my wife. I was out of town, and I got a text from my wife, and she said that she just showed me a picture that the kids were jumping off the roof into a snowbank. So we got so much snow, it's really ridiculous, and I think we're over 60 inches for the month of February right now. So it's been kind of nutty, but it's going to get better. And the problem for us is that we're doing a remodel here. So, it kind of gets in the way of some of that stuff, but we got kids and our teachers are doing a great job trying to just navigate through that stuff. And it gets to be frustrating because everybody's schedule gets out of whack. I mean, we were out of school for 9 days. So, wow. It gets out of whack, but at the same time, we got good people and they do incredible things and they're always willing to help out if they can. So we got good people.
Life in Wisconsin.
Yeah, right. It's crazy.
So, Joe, again, I appreciate you making time to talk with us. And I want to get right into it. Looking at your stuff, right? Your videos, your books. You're a master storyteller. Mm-hmm. And you tell the stories of your school district, your family, and all that, your journey in education. Is this something that always came natural to you, or is this something that you learned as a skill being a teacher and an educator?
Yeah, I don't know if it always came. I mean, probably always came natural to a point. I think people always thought I was full of it because I was telling stories all the time. But I think some of those stories had merit. And I don't know. For me, it was just like I just got so sick of people, talking about schools, things that happened 25 years ago, like they were happening yesterday. And I kind of got just fed up with that process. So we just thought, well, if we start talking about schools differently, maybe people will start talking about schools differently. So, and I don't think schools change until the way people talk about schools won't change until we change the way that we talk about schools. So the more that we can get information out there to people, and not only information, but when it comes down to the story piece of it, I truly believe that just like numbers don't drive movements, the story will always drive the movement. So if there's a story, now that doesn't mean that the numbers and data aren't important. It just means that they're not going to drive the movement. What's going to drive the movement is the connection, the emotional connection to a kid, a place, whatever the case may be. But the more we can connect them to the work that's happening through a story, I think the better we're all going to be for it.
And Joe, one of your stories, again, you're talking about driving the movement, right? And it's not about the scores and the information. You mentioned in there about all the acronyms that we have in schools today, right? Mm-hmm. All these letters that the parents don't even know what you're talking about. And they want their kids to have good grades, but their concern is not their percentage increase from the first semester to second semester. The concern is that they know that their kid is loved and that their kid is safe in your school district. Mm-hmm. Tell me about you sharing that message.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a shift that has to happen with parents too, because I think a lot of times we're only sharing the things that parents had connected to in the past. Like, so you get this whole movement out there where it's like, well, I was a really good speller in school, so my kid has to be a really good speller. And the thing, and people get jacked up about that. Here's the thing that we have to understand about that. It's like parents want to connect to things that they know and understand. You give them a spelling list on Monday of 10 words and they can practice it all week, and then the kid gets a great score on a spelling test, then they feel like they've done their job for the week because they can see the progress in that week. And I think what we had to do is we have to shift the story to, beyond that data to how are people interacting at school, and what's the connection to people at school, and are your students being better people, or are they being better test takers? And we don't want them to be better test takers. We want them to be better people. So if we don't share the great things that are happening in terms of the relationship, then parents are going to fall back on what they know and understand from when they were in school 25 years ago. And guess what? That's the story that they're going to tell. And then they're going to say, well, things aren't changed a lot because it's the same thing that's happening right now. So we got to really change the mindset of parents by making sure that we share the great things that are happening, not only from a score perspective, but there's a social emotional component that I don't think we get into nearly enough. And I want my kids, I want my son who's graduating this year, and I got a freshman and a sixth grader. I want them to be great people when they walk out of here. I talk to my middle school daughter all the time about when she'll let me, and I tell her when it comes down to the score, I don't care. I don't care what the grade is. I really don't. I want you to have a good experience, and I want you to like going to school. You get to high school, it's a little bit different because, when it comes to higher ed, we have to decide what that really looks like. So, but at the same time, we still want people to walk away with, feeling like this is a place that they want to be. So the more stories, the better in that regard. And the more people we could talk to when it comes to the connection, the better we're all going to be.
And Joe, we are live on Facebook right now, and people can leave comments and questions. And if you are watching live, please leave us a question or a comment, and we'll share about these stories and share about what we have going on in our schools. Joe, another way you tell stories is using Twitter very effectively. And you're someone that has a great understanding of it, that it's not for everyone, but there's a lot of value in there. When did you develop that mindset of using Twitter as an important tool for educators?
I think it was originally when we started talking about it. We started talking about school branding and telling a story of your school probably what would be 6 or 7 years ago. My friend Tony Sinanis, who I co-authored the book with, who's actually he's on Long Island. Actually, he's not on Long Island anymore. But he used to be the principal at Caniog Elementary School, and then he was at Hastings on Hudson, and now he's in Chappaqua. And okay. So he's out, he's out in your direction. And we just started actually talking about, we're kind of having the same kind of frustrations where, there's great things happening in schools, yet people weren't really talking about the great things that were happening in schools. So we actually kind of connected on Twitter and went from there. Here's the thing that people need to know about Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or, TikTok, whatever it is, doesn't matter. The idea that we have to keep in mind is the platforms are going to change over time. The question is, how are we making sure that the process does not change? Telling a story of your school shouldn't be dependent on the platform in which you're working with, because the platform is going to change. And the more that we can just say that we're putting a process together where we want people to be celebrated, the better you're all going to be for it. So I started using Twitter because I kept getting, more people that we could connect with. And when more people connected the work that we were doing, then more people wanted to be part of the work that we were doing. So I just wanted to find a place that we could celebrate our incredible teachers here and what they were doing. And that was a really good spot for us to do that, because it was in the time that a lot of educators were jumping on Twitter.
Yeah. And you do a great job on there. Your stuff is great. And, you share so many positive stories of your school and your students. And, one of the things I love hearing you talk about, I got to thinking. Yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing when I say that to my wife, but you say, your 1 minute walk to work, right? What a great concept. People love that. It does very well out there, Yeah. Where do you get these? I got to thinking. Where is that time where the superintendent, dad of three, speaker, author, where's that time come for you that you develop the time to think?
Yeah, I think it's probably on the walk to work. I only like my walk to work is literally a minute because I live across the street from school. So when I'm walking over, I tend to stay away from things that I know that I got to get done and think about things that I want to do. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of the change in mentality when it worked through it. And sometimes I'm just thinking about stuff. And to be honest, like I did these 1 minute walk to works because we were partnering with a group of people who does an incredible job of telling school stories for other schools, and that's Social School for EDU is a group that we work with here in Fall Creek, and they have been fantastic. And one of the things that we do in terms of partnering with them is I just to help provide like some sort of thought as we're thinking about the work that we're doing and celebrating the work of kids, and that kind of turned into I just have a lot of thoughts. So. But the other thing is like I don't just want to put stuff out there to put out there. I haven't done one in the last couple of weeks because I haven't been at work on Saturday morning, to be honest. And the other thing is like I just don't want to put stuff out just to put it out. So if it's got some sort of if I'm thinking about something, I'll put it out, and if not, I won't. But it's just just a quick walk and trying to be authentic about it, because there's I think there's a lot of people that struggle. I think a lot of times we get into this spot where we're chosen to lead because we're really good at what we did before, but then when we get into leadership, we're not always told how to lead better. And that gets me to a spot. My friend Jimmy Casas is really great about talking about the impact of how people get into leadership roles, but nobody trains them on how to go into that leadership role. Like, how do you run an effective meeting? How do you make sure that you empower people? All of the logistical pieces of what leadership is. We don't talk to people about that because we're just fixated on the fact that they were really good at what they did when they were doing whatever it was before.
Yeah. And that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Joe. How do you work with your principals and your leadership teams in your school? What would they say your style is?
Super hands off, honestly. And it's not like it's not like you like let them just do everything that they want to do. I think you have to be, as an instructional leader, you have to be instructional in that leadership, and that you're trying to provide opportunities for them. At the same time, I just try not to micromanage anything when it comes down to it. Like I hired people to do a job. My administrative team is fantastic. I trust them to do a job. I mean, like, you're paying these people to do a job, let them do the job. So our job is, as from a superintendent lens, is to just make sure that in everything, when it comes to leadership and everything, when it comes to the work of the school, we try to provide three things all the time, and that's time, resource, opportunity. So if we can provide time, resource, and opportunity for them to get better, then they're going to get better. We believe that they're going to get better, but that doesn't change when it comes to the leadership lens. We have to do the same thing for our leaders. And I just, I trust them to do their work, and we try to provide some guidance moving forward. But there's not a lot of times that they'll come to me and say, I'm thinking about this, and I say no to it. I mean, we really want them to grasp onto it. And if it doesn't work out well, I think, as from the superintendent lens, I got to be willing to step up and say, yeah, you know what? I just thought that was a really good idea at the time. It didn't work out. We're going to try to move forward with it. And, I signed off on it because I felt like it was going to be a good deal, but just didn't. That's the way it works.
Yeah. And do you work on your leadership development with them? Is that something that at a cabinet meeting, when you have to talk about a board meeting and implementing a new 7th grade curriculum, do you start or do you end your meetings with a leadership concept or something like that?
No, not really, because I just want it to be I always want it to be authentic, and I don't want it to be like, well, he made us read this book, or he made us do this article, or whatever the case may be. I just want to have a conversation with them. So I'll ask them where they're at, what's popping, anything that they're thinking about. And, that usually lends itself to a conversation about the great things that are happening in the building, but also what I can do to support them as leaders moving forward.
Well, we hired your that's not your brother-in-law there, your cousin. How would you say?
Who, Tom?
Yeah, Tom Ricard.
Yeah,
we hired him a couple of years ago. And when we asked him, I asked him in the interview, this is a true story. Yeah. I said, Tom, what is your style? What is going to be your style with our staff and he said, I don't really have a style. My goal is to be authentic. And that's the word that he used. And he's an authentic leader. Yeah.
He's a great dude, man. He's a great dude. And so my sister is married to his brother, Dan. So, and they're out on Long Island too. And so we were, and it's just been fun to kind of connect with him in a different light because, I know him just from just from my sister and stories about families and stuff like that. But we connect more now that we're both, in education, the idea that we can connect online and that kind of thing. So he's fantastic dude, really fantastic dude. So I'm glad that I get to know him.
Cool. Joe, you and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but you started out as a guidance counselor. Was that your first kind of teaching position?
No, I was a second grade teacher, and then I taught fifth grade, and then I was a guidance counselor after, or a counselor, school counselor after, and then elementary principal, and then I was an elementary principal and superintendent, and then now superintendent.
Would you say, my wife is a guidance counselor, and she certainly provides me with a lot of guidance, and she's a great listener as well. Would you say that time that you served as a guidance counselor, does that help you in your role as superintendent?
I think so. I think I don't know. I guess what it comes down to is like if you're not a listener first, then that's going to be a problem. And for me, like that's when I get into my worst, I don't listen well. I always think about how I'm going to answer. So I'm not really taking it all in. I'm just trying to, because by nature, I think I'm a problem solver. So I'm always looking for the answer. And when I shouldn't be looking for the answer, sometimes I should just be listening. So when I overstep my bounds, it's really more often than not, it's because I'm just trying to fix the problem without hearing the whole thing. So, I think any job that gets you to a place where you're being a better listener helps you in the long run.
I agree with that, and I am guilty of that also. And
I think we all are on some level.
Yeah, because there's so many problems that come our way. Mm-hmm. I like that concept of who was that CEO famous said, if you're going to bring me a problem, you bring me the solution with it also. Yeah.
It's as long as we're having a conversation about how it's going to get better. But the first thing is actually to listen and make sure that we're on the same page when it comes to moving forward. So,
Joe, tell me about the concept, and I love it, and I agree with you. Every interaction matters. Sometimes, we live in a world now, right, where everything kind of can be filmed and everything can be reviewed, right? And I almost think that's a way, like, that you should be acting as if you were on tape all the time, but you're very purposeful in that. And where did that concept or that idea come from about every interaction matters?
Well, I think, it's funny because now we're living in a world where everything does matter because everything could be documented, like you said. But we've been talking about this for like 10 years now. The idea that every interaction matters, because the thing that you have to understand is that every interaction matters because it could be the one thing that they talk about for the rest of their lives, right? And I always tell a story. I got like when I was a counselor, I used to go and do these team building activities. And, I used to do that. One time I played this really awful team building game. And I got in there and I was doing this game where I'm telling the kids, like, we're all going on this picnic and you got to come on this picnic with me. And you got to figure out like how you're going to be able to come on the picnic. And my name's Joe and I'm bringing jelly beans to the picnic. I'm also bringing a jump rope and I'm also bringing, whatever, I think that, and so they had to bring stuff that started with their first name. And it was awful activity. It didn't go well. And so I just went on. I didn't even think about it. 10 years later, I'm back in the same school that I was at. And I'm talking to one of the students. We're just having a conversation and we post a picture online that we're there. And somebody from that class 10 years ago responded to that tweet with, "Hey, are you bringing sandwiches to the picnic?" So that was like 10 years ago and it lasted 2 minutes. And this is the thing that the kid remembered. Like, that's what it was. You don't always control what they remember. At the same time, they're going to remember something. The story of you is going to be told. There's no doubt about that. The question becomes, which story do you want told? And so every interaction matters because it could be the one that they talk about over and over and over again. And if it's not something that you want them to talk about, then you got to really kind of take a step back and make sure that you're in the right place having that conversation.
And it makes your actions and the words you say very important if you think like that. And it's a great concept.
Yeah, it totally changes the way you walk into stuff because I think that, if you realize that this is the one thing that they could talk about for the rest of their lives, then you change the way that you enter that conversation. And more often than not, I keep that in mind as much as I can. But there are times that I just miss. And at that point, you got to go back to the people that you miss with and just say, man, I'm sorry. Like I don't know where my head was at that time. I just, here's what I was thinking. It's not the right thing, but here's what I was thinking. And then guess what? That becomes the thing that they remember 10 years from now is the fact that you went back to apologize. because you're not going to be right all the time at all. And in fact, I'm probably wrong more than I'm right. But, the more I can just talk my way out of it.
Well, the power of the apology goes a long way.
I totally agree.
And you talk about that in here also, right? About leaders being able to apologize. But Joe, I love this book, and it really just a ton of great concepts in here. Tell me about the journey about you and Tony writing this book together.
Yeah, so Tony, I think Tony, I mean, when it comes down to it, Tony is one of the best school leaders I've ever been around in my life. I mean, he is, from an instruction standpoint, from a motivation standpoint, from a connection to kids standpoint. He's the whole concept in the book about how we're creating schools that are more about adults than they are about kids. That's all Tony, man. Like, this guy is legit. And so we started talking years ago, just about, it's funny because I was actually out in New Jersey. We were at an Ed Camp, New Jersey. Geez, man, almost 8-9 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. And we were both thinking about a session that we wanted to do in terms of just talking about the way we changed, how people talk about schools, because it was a big deal to us back then. And so we did this Ed Camp session together. And then the next thing 2 days later, we were doing a podcast together, and 2 weeks later, Corwin Press called us, and Peter DeWitt was actually in charge of that whole thing and asked us to write a book on branding. And that's kind of the way that it worked. And then that turned into a book on principal professional development, leading learning in digital age, and then hacking leadership. We just kind of kept rolling, and we'd submit stuff to each other, and we just kind of do a lot of the stuff online. We'd talk every now and again, but we talk all the time, but we talk about the book and just kind of go from there. But it's good to be in a space where there's a guy that just kind of pushes your thinking, and he's as good an educator as I've ever met. So it was an honor to write the book with him.
Well, we're going to have to connect with him here on the show. If he's watching, Tony, we're going to reach out to you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Joe, how do you balance it all? You're a superintendent. You're a young guy. You have a family, 3 kids in school here. You're married. How do you fit it all in? You're writing books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. There's days that I don't know. I don't know if I have the right. I'm probably not a picture for a balanced life, to be honest. I mean, I think when I was hired as a superintendent, what was like 7-8 years ago now at this point, 8 years ago. And I was hired as a superintendent, and we were talking about, the other roles that went through it. And I said, we can do, I talked to the board, and I said, at some point I'm going to hit a wall. And at that point, we're just going to have a conversation about what it looks like moving forward. And because I just run at one speed, we can take something off my plate, I'm going to put something else back on the plate. It just doesn't matter. And so I think that I try to, when it comes down to it, like if I'm traveling or if I'm here, one of the things that's really important is like when I'm at home with the family, I'm at home with the family. And my wife is like she's amazing. She's just, she does everything for the family. She puts all her stuff on hold to make sure that we get what we need. And I couldn't be more proud of her, to be honest. I mean, first and foremost, I'm extremely proud of the work that she does, not only with the family, but she's a nutritional therapy practitioner, and she saves people's lives, which is like a legit. I'm just talking about how to change the narrative of schools. She's out here changing people's lives. So, but I think that I have an incredible partner in the conversation and moving forward. And the more that we can do to kind of connect with each other and just, when we're there together and we're with the family. But I think the other thing is like the stuff that I do outside of the house really helps us really kind of focus on what's important when we get home. So, we try to provide our kids with every opportunity that they can. And sometimes those things get, to be, they cost money or they take time or whatever. We just want to be there for them anytime that we can. So I guess I'm just lucky to have a really great partner in the process. And that's the only balance that I have at this point, is just to make sure that they're taken care of.
And then follow up to that, your own personal wellness, right? You're the superintendent of a district. You got to be at school every day, early in the morning. The temperatures there in Wisconsin can be challenging. How do you take care of yourself physically so that you could be at your best, not only for your family, but for your school district?
Yeah, again, I don't know if I'm the model for that at this point. But like I said, like my wife is extremely nutritious, like, and she's really, and and when we're at home, it's all organic, all really natural food. And I think that's really helpful. I can tell when I leave the house, though, I can tell if I'm like out speaking or something like that, there's a distinct difference in how I eat and how I take care of myself. So I'm much better when I'm at home without question. So I think that the more I can be home to take care of myself, the better for everybody. But I just, I think the biggest thing is just kind of I get my energy from people. So trying not to be, when it comes to my own wellness, just trying not to be alone, because I really like to be around other people. So kind of connecting and talking and having a good time with people, just having just sitting back and having a conversation. I think that that provides a lot of energy.
Yeah. Joe, how about, you mentioned the speaking. How do you develop your message if you're going to a conference? And I believe you're going to the National Principals Conference in Boston this summer. You're going there?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Tell me, how are you going to develop what you're going to say for that audience in that space?
Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest thing is I totally stay in my lane. I just really do. You want me to talk about learning spaces? You want me to talk about curriculum design? You want me to talk about like all of that stuff? Like, don't call me. I am not your guy at all. You want me to talk about how to, change the way people talk about schools? I can do that. I can do that all day. You want to talk about how we can build momentum for people, being a culture of storytellers as opposed to being isolated in rooms? I can do that because our people are doing amazing things when it comes to that. But, I just try to stay in my own lane. I really do. I just don't, I just feel like if you're going to be, perceived as knowing something in a certain area, make sure that you know something in a certain area. So we just, nothing that we talk about in Hacking Leadership or any of the stuff that I go out to speak with, none of it is like splitting the atom, man. It's just talking about how to make things better for kids in schools. That's all it is. And so sometimes it's logistical things like writing two, notes to start your day, and an idea I got from Jeff Zoll in Illinois, or making, the calls that I got an idea from Melissa Cardismith in Illinois, or making sure that, we do, just making sure that we value people as much as we can. I try to just really do what we can to stay in our lane and be really logistical. We want people, when they walk away from a session, if it doesn't matter if it's a keynote, it doesn't matter if it's a workshop, we just want them to walk away knowing that A, the work that they're doing is really good, and B, they can maybe make one change to that process to make it even better. So I don't want them walking away with like 9 different things that they can do, because they won't do any of them. Like, just find one thing that's going to make you better and get really good at that. To start your week with 2 positive notes a day. Get out of your office and start doing that. Or spend a week, in the parking lot just talking to parents. Or start some momentum by giving stuff away at football games or basketball games or something like that. Or put a hoop on your back on a backpack and run around basketball games and let people shoot at you. I mean, all of these things are important because they just build momentum. And so I think when I prepare for those sessions, the first and foremost, I just totally stay in my lane. And because if somebody asks me 5 questions about one thing, I want to be able to answer all 5 like that. Like, I don't even want to think about it. Like, you're looking to build a culture of storytellers. Here, do this. If you want to make sure that you're telling the story of your school in multiple platforms, do this. I think that's important.
And you know what you're talking about. You've lived it. You're doing it. It's in this book, and that's great advice. Joe, let's get to rapid fire questions, okay? Quick answer. We'll go through these quickly. How about that?
Let's do it.
The last book you read.
Power Moments.
Last movie you saw.
I saw half of Star is Born on a Plane. That counts, right?
Okay.
It was good. We just landed, so I didn't get a chance to watch the rest. So I'll watch the rest next time I'm on a plane.
Okay. Favorite place to travel?
Spain. Not even close.
Yeah, you went with your family last summer.
Yep, we'd go tomorrow. My wife grew up there. She was an Air Force brat. I would take her back tomorrow, and I would live there with her tomorrow.
Get some tapas.
Yeah, she's just happier there, man. That's all there is to it.
Cool, man. What's one of the greatest challenges in your work?
Making sure that people feel valued with everything they do, even if I can't be there every moment that I'm with them.
Something that motivates Dr. Joe.
There are still people in the world that don't know the story of Fall Creek, Wisconsin. And we're not going to stop until they do.
You're going to get it there. A pet peeve of yours is?
Probably being fake. I think that, we're all just be authentic, just be real. And I think sometimes when I feel like at my worst, I feel like that it's a bit and not authentic without question. So just being fake. And that's for everybody, including me.
Best purchase under $100 that has had a great impact on your life.
Best purchase under $100. First meal in Spain with my family.
Did the kids enjoyed that trip?
Yep. Changes the way you walk down it just changed the way that we walk down the street.
Yeah. And I loved your story about the body language and not the nonverbal communication about people knowing if they wanted you in their space or not. Yeah, that was powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The biggest difference between people on the East Coast and Wisconsin. Tell me about life in Wisconsin.
Oh man, let's see. You're talking about anybody on the East Coast or a specific group or what?
I grew up in Staten Island. So how about New York?
New York? I would probably say winning basketball teams. That's probably the biggest issue right now.
Big Ten country.
I'm talking about the Bucks, man. Like the Knicks. I can't see winning football teams because somehow Giants always beat the Packers when they shouldn't. So anyway, I would say that the biggest difference, it's just a different pace, man. It totally is. Like, when we're out on the East Coast and I go, into New York or I go into, if I'm talking to Tony or whatever, or talking to my sister, like it's just a different pace. It's not better or worse. It's just different. You got to be able to adjust to it.
Besides yourself, most famous person from Wisconsin.
Oh man. The most famous person from Wisconsin. My gosh, I don't know. I would have to say the most famous person from Wisconsin or like lives in Wisconsin right now. I would say the most famous person from Wisconsin. She's probably Chris Farley.
Okay. 3 most important qualities of being a great speaker.
Be authentic. Make people feel, and always close strong.
Nice. You're all in your job, and you're all in with your family, and that's evident. The word authentic. You could see that. What is something outside of that, Joe, that you're proud of?
I am the most proud that there's a school district of 850 kids that gets to tell stories all over the world right now. I'm the most proud of that. And now I'm the most proud that now we go to conferences and we can take our staff. We took three of our building secretaries to a conference last week that I was keynoting, and just to see the reaction to people when they're in that space, like just to see how our people are addressed because of where they work is really, I'm the most proud of that. Like I always tell them, like when it comes down to it, I want them to feel the way that I feel when I talk about them. That's all I want for them. And so to be in these spaces where I can see that they feel the way that I feel when I talk about them, and they feel like they own the place when they walk up and down the hallways, like I want that for everybody in this building, every single one of them.
That's powerful, Joe. That's real powerful. Joe, I like how you've said when you're at your worst. You mentioned it a couple of times when you're at your worst. What's something that's been a personal hurdle for you, or a professional hurdle, something that's been a challenge for you to get past?
I think I'm probably in the middle of it right now. And that is like, am I giving everything I've got to every space that I'm in? There are days that, you just wonder if you're doing anything as good as you possibly could. And sometimes it's time management. Other times it's, task management or whatever. But I think when I'm at my worst, I feel like I'm just kind of floating, like, like the duck with the, feet going, all over underneath the water and just kind of floating on top. But that's where I feel like the biggest hurdle is making sure that I can be present in the moment with people wherever I'm at.
Short-term personal goal, 3 to 5 months.
Short-term personal goal. I guess, when it comes down to personal and professional goals, they're all the same. I live this, we live this work. My family has chosen to live across the street from school. My family has chosen to be in this school. My family has chosen to be noticed and, good, bad, or otherwise. So my personal and professional goals kind of are the same thing. And that is to make sure that we can get our incredible people into a renovated building by, September 1 to start the school year next year. And I'm so proud of the work that they've done to get to this point that I can't wait for them to walk into that building and just kind of feel like it's theirs.
Long-term goal. We'll keep that word out of there, and you're correct. Long-term goal, 3 to 5 years.
I think it kind of goes back to there are still people in the world that don't know where Fall Creek, Wisconsin is, and we're just not going to stop until that's done. Everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to know about this place. Everybody needs to know about these teachers. Everybody needs to know about these kids. I'll tell you, they are doing things that would blow your mind. And at the same time, the way that people talk about schools today just is not fair to the people that are killing it, like our people are killing it here. So and I think maybe on a grander scheme, obviously, we want to make sure that our story is told here because this is where it started. But there are great things going around. There are great things happening in schools all over the country. And when people talk about schools as though the things that happened 25 years ago happened yesterday, it devalues, everything that's happening in that space. And the other thing is, like, the bigger issue for me is how we talk about schools. And when it comes to the longer term goal, nobody's going to change the way that they talk about schools until we change the way that we talk about schools. And when we use words like just, and we use words like only, we get to the place where we devalue our own work. And when we devalue our own work, we give the person that we're talking to license to do exactly the same. And that doesn't change until we start changing the way that we talk about the work that we're doing. So the long-term goal is just to have people know and understand that their words matter. Every interaction matters, but their words matter when they're having these conversations, because nobody's going to change the way they talk about the incredible work that they do until they change the way that they talk about the incredible work that they do. Hell, be proud of the work that you do, man. I mean, seriously, like you're out here changing lives and talking about being just or only. That's ridiculous. Like, you're a safe place for kids and for adults. You should celebrate that work. So the long-term goal is just to change the way that people talk about schools.
And you did that today, Joe. That was passionate. That was powerful. Certainly authentic. You are doing a great job. Fall Creek, Wisconsin is lucky to have you. And I'm going to put that on my list to visit. Wisconsin's next summer for our RV trip. We're going to come out your way. Give me some cheese.
All right, man. I got you then. You come on out here. We'll take you to cricket country.
This is Dr. Joe Sanfelippo, obviously a passionate educator. Again, I want to give a shout out for his book along with his partner. Joe, this was an amazing interview. It was an honor to speak with you.
All right, man. I appreciate the time. Good luck. Good. And if there's anything else we can do, just let us know. All right.
And I end my day with Go Port. So give us a Go Cricket.
Go Crickets, man. Go Crickets.
Here we go. Joe Sanfelippo, everyone. We're going to sign off here on Education, Leadership, and Beyond. Dr. Joe is certainly on Twitter. It's at Joe Sanfelippo, right?
Joe_Sanfelippo, yep.
And at Andrew Murata 21. If either one of us can help you out, don't hesitate to reach out. And Joe, thank you for coming on.
I appreciate the time. Have a good one, everybody.
All right, signing off. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.